Here I am. It is the end of May, May 29th. Um, and I figured I'd jump on here and make a quick update. It's been a while since I did so. Just kind of what's been going on. Some things never change, some things do. Um, One thing I've been doing since January 5th, so approximately for 5 months now, I've been doing a carnivore diet where I literally have had no vegetables, no grains, no fruits. I'm just eating meats, beef, bacon, butter, eggs, high fat diet. I've lost somewhere around 35 pounds since I started, and that's in 5 months. So that averages out somewhere to around, I don't know, less than 2 pounds a week, which is what you're supposed to do when you're losing weight. Try not to lose it too fast. But that's been interesting. It's a little bit boring, and I can see that whenever I get to a target weight, which my target weight back years ago, I figured 240 sounded good. I'm not sure if that's exactly right, but I'm so wide and I'm literally big boned. I mean, I have a very broad frame, so I've settled on 240, and so I'm 22 pounds away or so from that. So we'll see what happens. I've lost two pant sizes. Um, I was wearing 42s after Christmas, and everything was just discomfort, tendonitis, constant tendonitis, seemingly. And I just needed to make a change, and the tendonitis has pretty much resolved. Um, so that's been good health wise. It's a change I'm making. As per usual, wife is not on board. Um, Feels like I do a lot of things on my own, and she interprets them as like extreme. That's actually what she said one time in one of our marriage therapy appointments, how everything I do is extreme. I don't know if it's extreme. I think I do have a personality where I pursue things like either I'm in or I'm out. There's really not a lot of in between. And so maybe to normies that seems like extreme or wild. Maybe it is. I don't know. I did research on the diet before I started it, and my daughter had been doing it for a couple of years because she has an autoimmune disorder. So it's not like I just jumped into something without knowing what it was. But we'll see what happens with that. I just actually saw my doctor this morning on a telehealth visit, and she said to wait on blood work. She's going to check the blood work in August, see if I have scurvy or whatever, not getting enough vitamins or minerals or whatever. In other news, I visited several churches trying to find one. Um, and that's sort of still in process. I'm starting to think that I need to create content again for YouTube, like real content, consumable content, not like this which is for myself, but consumable content for people who are maybe in my situation. Uh, Christian men who've dealt with mental health issues or struggle with those things, and maybe talk a little bit about church and just how difficult it can really seem to be to find people who are being faithful, who don't just view Jesus as like a little bit of seasoning in their life, but view him as the whole ball of wax, which is the kind of people that I want to be around, you know. Um, so still kind of searching there and trying to figure out where to put energy, limited energy into the things that are going to be the most fruitful. And that sort of tension and that sort of question has come up a lot in marriage. We've been in therapy for me and my wife have been in therapy for roughly 4 years, maybe more, maybe 5 years. And we actually had a session last night, and I was saying it kind of feels like for me, we're still talking about the stuff the issues that I was raising on the very first encounter when I first sat down on the couch, which is that the marriage feels off balance, feels like the expectations are very high on me and very low on her. And the issue that I raised, was, well, what are we doing in this therapy? Because The therapist gives us homework, he gives us tasks that he wants us to promise to follow through on, and we don't do it. And it wasn't about laying blame on her or anything, but the things just don't seem important. My dad told me that we make time for what's important to us, and that seems true. And there's just a lot of things that have come to light, just wondering if my wife is spirit-filled. I know she is saved. I know she wants to follow God and wants to be around people who are talking about God, but even a thing like church, or a devotional life, we're very different. I was actually reading, and there's a little tiny verse in Deuteronomy that just appears, in a section that's about mixture and mixing things together, and it says, "Don't yoke an ox and a donkey together." Just that idea, and because when you do, they have different levels of strength. Maybe they're different heights or whatever, but they're both going to be miserable. They're both going to have a difficult time and not be able to get much done because you're putting them in a situation where they're not corresponding to each other. And my wife was very offended, that I quoted that. The therapist said, "Well, are you saying you're unequally yoked?" And I'm saying, yes, we're different, not unequally yoked in the way that Christians talk about it. Oh, this should a saved person marry an unsaved person? Of course not. But it's more than that. The word is deeper than all that. It's more about the idea that if I'm down in the depths of something and she is a snorkeler, one of us has to move to be able to relate to the other one, and it can't be her. It has to be me. And that just wears on you. And she can't understand what I'm talking about. Like I brought up the idea of resentment, that I am still dealing with resentment. I have resentments about the way the marriage has been, the seeming unfairness of it. The fact that when I say things, when I express emotions, needs, wants, desires, future goals, church goals, those things a lot of them are just quickly dismissed, or they're interpreted fearfully or negatively, like something's wrong with me and I need to change, rather than there being a sense that Jessica's trying to understand what I'm saying and what I'm expressing. And the first time this ever came up, it was too late. She was pregnant, and I felt a responsibility and that the right thing to do was to marry her. But when we were planning the marriage, I said, here's what I prefer. I prefer just a small gathering on the beach, sort of informal, except in the eyes of God, like just our close friends and relatives, not a big hullabaloo. And that just wasn't even considered. It never even entered her mind. Her and her mother just went off on planning all this stuff. Big, long marriage ceremony in a church with a bunch of people that we hardly ever saw again. And it sort of started there. So as I'm talking about all this resentment in the session last night, her response to it was to say to the therapist, well, he shouldn't feel resentment. He should... people are going to do whatever they're going to do, so why does he feel this resentment? And essentially invalidating what I was saying, which wasn't the first time. It was just another time. This is an ongoing present tense issue that happens. And then she said, the main thing is that I need to not invalidate her feelings, that I need to make space for her feelings, and I need to be a safe place and all this stuff. And she said all this without any irony, without any awareness that what she was saying is rules for thee, not for me. It's not something that's malicious. It's just that there's not the present capacity maybe, or the ability to look at my life and instead of making a judgment about me that's negative or that just interprets things in the way she's always done it, but actually can have empathy for me. I brought up the idea, do I want to be healed? Do I want to be delivered? Or do I want sympathy? And what I really want is neither of those things. I mean, I want to be healed. I want to be as whole as I can be and walk before God in a blameless way. But I would like in my primary relationship in the marriage to have someone who empathizes with me at least a little bit, at least some, who makes an effort to understand my perspective, not just her own, or not just saying her own. And that doesn't happen. So, not sure what to do with that. You know, I kind of floated the idea that maybe it's time to back off of some of that a little bit and just, you know, maybe instead of meeting every week, just meet every other week, because it doesn't seem to be effective. So we'll see what happens there. Not much else happening. Just working. Work's going to get busy for me next month, especially because we're short-staffed, but appreciate the work I have, appreciate where I work, being able to walk every day in Old Salem, the historic district, reading books here and there, really trying to get away. I've realized what a time suck and how depressing social media has become, and how I think it's really just, I can tell a difference when I'm not, if I bed rot and doom scroll like the kids say, I get depressed. I mean, I just start to see the world differently in a lot of negative ways. And it's really like clear that sometimes it's entertaining, but mostly this is a poison. This social media business, Instagram, TikTok, it's mostly poisonous. And I've realized that, and I need to make a change there. That's going to be the next thing. I need to make a change there. Health-wise, I have a goal of trying to cut back on my caffeine consumption and any other stimulants, because I'm trying to pursue this carnivore thing, just to get an idea baseline of what my energy level even is. I don't know, because I drink 6 cups of coffee every day. So that's all the news that's fit to print or publish. See you next time.